All right, let's start our homework review on page 35 here, going over 10 through 18. So for 10 through 12, we're finding the x and y intercepts. This is something that we've done thus far, only given an equation and then plugging in 0 for x or y. Okay, so we haven't actually looked at this graphically yet, but as long as we understand what an x and a y intercept are, this is actually simpler than the way that we've been finding x and y intercepts up to this point. Okay, so an x-intercept is the point on the graph where I cross the x-axis, which is right there. The y-intercept is the point on the graph where I cross the y-axis, which is right there. So there's two ways that we can write our intercepts. You can either write this as an ordered pair. The x-intercept would have coordinates 2, 0. You know what, let me change this back to x-intercept would have coordinates of 2, 0, or you can just say 2. Right? And then my y-intercept for number 10 would have coordinates of -2, 0. I'm sorry, 0, -2, or you can just say -2. Okay? Because it's understood that in a y-intercept, the x value is always 0, and that with an x-intercept, the y value is always 0. So you can either give the coordinates, or you can just give the values themselves. Okay, so this is a very visual skill. Just look at the graph and see what you've got. Okay, so for number 11, my x-intercept has a value of 1, 2, 3, 4. My y-intercept has a value of 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course you can also write the ordered pairs for those as well. But it's the point where I'm crossing the graph that I'm concerned with. And so this would be the ordered pair 4, 0. This would be the ordered pair 0, 4. Number 12, my x-intercept here is 2, 0, or 2. My y-intercept is 0, 4, or just 4. All right. So hopefully that's fairly easy for you to just kind of look at the graph, see where your graph crosses the axis. That's all we're doing here, looking for those points of intersection. All right, for numbers 13 through 15, you were asked to graph these by making a table. And we'll, in our tables, we've, in the past, picked out random values for x, plugged them in, and got the corresponding y value back out. Well, if you'll notice, in number 13, there is no x value. Okay, there's a 4, and that's it. So what that means is that the x does not have any effect on the y. No matter what I plug in for x, my y value is going to be 4 all the time. Okay, so that's why there's no x here, because it doesn't affect the y variable. Okay, so if x is 1, y is 4. If x is 2, y is 4. If x is 5, y is 4. If x is -1, y is 4. If x is -3, y is 4. Going on to positive infinity, no matter what I plug in for x, and going on to negative infinity, no matter what I plug in for x, y is always going to have the same value of 4, which is going to form a horizontal line right there on y is equal to 4. Okay, so as far as following the directions here, since it does say to graph using a table, your table would look like this. You've got your x on the left, your equation in the middle and your y on the right. So just pick any values that you want, okay, and then it doesn't really matter what those values are because your y value is always going to be 4 because you're not plugging anything in for x. There's no x to be plugged in for. All right. If I had something similar to this, let's change this to an x is equal to 4. Okay. Same thing here. Doesn't matter what your y value is, x is always going to be the same. Okay, so I'm going to come over to 1, 2, 3, 4 on the x-axis and just draw a line there. Okay, these are kind of special equations, special linear equations. They give me vertical and horizontal lines. Okay, so it might be worth jotting down somewhere in your notes that y equals some number gives me a horizontal line, and x is equal to some number gives me a vertical line. All right, and we will see that again moving forward. All right, for number 14, again, this is a little bit different than anything we've looked at thus far as making a table, but still just plugging in values for x to get values back out for y. Let's see if I can squeeze my little table in here. We've got x values, then your equation, and then the y value that you get out of that. So plug in whatever values you want to for x. I'm going to use 0, 1, and 2, and then get the corresponding y value that goes with it. Okay, so this is when x is 0, y is also 0. So I'm going to come over here and plot a point at 0, 0. When x is 1, y is 3. So I plot a point at 1, 3. When x is 2, y is 6, and I don't have room for that on my graph. And that will happen from time to time. So what that means is I can't plug x in for this equation because my graph is not big enough. So I'm going to go back and plug something else in. Let's use -1 instead. So when x is -1, y is -3, and I can plot that. So -1, -3, plot your point, and then draw a line through your points. Or try to draw a line through your points. There we go. Okay, and then make sure that your line goes all the way through and you've got arrows on both sides there. Alright, next one here again, we're just plugging in values for x, getting values back out for y, setting up the table like we always have. X goes on the left, equation goes in the middle, and then your y value on the right. And again, I'm going to start with 0, 1, and 2. So when x is, I'm sorry, I copied that down wrong. When x is 0, y is 4. So I'm going to plot the point 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When x is 1, y is 5. So we go 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, when I plug in 2 for x, I'm going to get a value for y that does not fit on my graph. So I'm going to come back, and instead of going to the right, because I'm going to keep on going up, so if I plug in 2 and it won't fit, then I know if I plug in 3, 4, 5 and go in that direction, none of those will fit either. So I'm going to come back and plug in -1. So when x is -1, y is 3, -1, 1, 2, 3. And then draw your line. Alright, so that's graphing by making a table. And all of these were already solved for y for us. But just remember, if it's not already solved for y, then I want to do that before I begin making my table. It just makes it easier on you. Alright, let's look at 16 through 18. Okay, so now I'm still graphing, but I'm doing it by finding the intercepts. To find intercepts, we're plugging in 0 for x and y. And we talked yesterday about you can take your thumb and cover up whichever variable that you're plugging 0 in for. Okay, so for number 16, to find my y-intercept, I'll plug in 0 for x. So I'm covering up the x. I'm left with -y is equal to 3. Well, if -y equals +3, then +y equals -3. Okay, fairly simple to solve that. And then to find my x-intercept, I plug in 0 for y. So take my thumb, cover up my y portion, and I'm left with x is equal to 3. And so these give me 2 points on my graph. Y is -3, x-intercept is +3. Plot those 2 points, and then draw your line through them. So that's the more visual way to go about this. For number 17, let's actually go ahead and plug 0 in and solve. So for my x-intercept on number 17, I would plug in 0 for y. And this is going to give me 10 times x is equal to 0. And if you want to go ahead and divide by 10 there, you can. But for me to multiply 10 by something and get 0, that something has to be 0 itself. And so that gives me the point 0 for y, 0 for x is the origin. And then to find my y-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So 10 times 0 is equal to -5y. And again, I end up with 0 is equal to negative. Okay, so y is equal to 0. So my x-intercept is 0, 0. My y-intercept is also 0, 0. So we're actually going to have to do a little bit more here to figure out what my graph looks like, because I could draw a line through that point in a lot of different ways. Okay, so to try to figure out what the line actually looks like, I'm going to have to get at least one more point. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to take this equation, solve it for y by dividing by -5 on both sides. It's going to give me y is equal to -2x, and then I'm just going to plug in some value for x other than 0 because I've already done that. Okay, so when x is 1, y is -2. So now I've got another point there, and I can draw my line through those 2 points. Okay, so kind of a little bit of a, I guess, trick question there, and it's telling you to graph using the x and y intercepts, and you really can't do that.